Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Initiations, which is episode 2 of season 2 of Star Trek Voyager. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Voyager, one episode at a time. In this video, I cover the second season episode, Initiations. So Initiations is the episode in which Chakotay is off on a shuttlecraft by himself when he is attacked by a Kazon teenager. Chakotay manages to destroy the ship, but he saves the teenager before the ship is destroyed, saving his life. This Kazon is not grateful because he was sent on this mission as an initiation ritual to earn his name by killing Chakotay, and the fact that he failed to do so and was in fact captured by his enemy instead renders him useless and worse than dead as far as his tribe is concerned, or his sect, I should say. And so he keeps asking Chakotay to kill him, and of course Chakotay refuses to do so. They are both then captured by the bigger Kazon ship, and they then do like the kiss of death on the teenager, which is terrible for him as he knows that he is going to be killed without ever earning his name because he failed in his task. However, Chakotay breaks free and asks the teenagers to go with him, and they do, and they run off to this planet where they're stuck, and the Kazon are hunting them down. Eventually Voyager shows up, and the Kazon pretend to be Voyager's friend and looking for them, but really they want to get to them first, and they get to Chakotay and the kid, and Chakotay tells the kid to kill him, therefore he can earn his name and Voyager can beam him aboard and revive him. However, the kid instead decides to kill the Maj of his sect because he knows that the Maj would never forgive him, and then he pledges his loyalty to his new Maj and says, you can kill me if you like, or you can have a devoted servant. And so the new Maj takes him on board, and he earns his name, and he warns Chakotay to stay away from his territory, and they leave in peace. And Chakotay, when he does his little ritual where he talks to his deceased father, he asks his father to look over the young boy named Carr. So, it's the Nog episode. It's the episode where Nog is a Kazon. And no offense to Aaron Eisenberg, he's a good actor. I got no problem. Unfortunately, actually, the phrase would be he was a good actor. Unfortunately, very tragic. But yeah, I have nothing against Aaron Eisenberg. He's a decent actor, but this episode's very annoying, and it basically comes off as Nog. I think he was the bad choice because Nog is a recurring character. Granted, he becomes even more important later on past this, so maybe they didn't know that, but it's like impossible. Even at the time, I remember when I first saw this, I'm like, it's Nog. It's like, at the time, it's just like really difficult to watch this episode without thinking, why is Nog acting like a Kazon? Like, it's just actively too distracting. However, unlike most people, I don't really care particularly for Nog as a character. I find him a little annoying, and in this case I find him a lot annoying. It's really difficult to watch this episode with such a sort of whiny brat that I know that like I'm meant to like care about his earning his name and the fact that the type of his culture and how Chakotay is sort of bonding with him a bit, I guess, and earning his friendship, but they have the strange dynamic where he's constantly wanting to kill Chakotay. but I don't. I don't find this interesting. Part of it is, yeah, I find Nog annoying, and I think Nog was the wrong choice to play this character. But even if it wasn't played by Nog and it was played by a different character or different actor, I mean, I still wouldn't be that interested in it because the whole premise of the Kazon is just boring. Like, they're just not a good species. Now, there's some episodes that use the Kazon well, that are interesting, despite the fact that the Kazon are uninteresting. Alliances coming up later is a good one. There was State of Flux over in season 1, and the the basics thing is okay, but none of those really try to, like, I mean, Alliances do, I guess, tries to delve deep into the culture, and I think that's the only, like, success they had. But, like, this episode, for example, like, they try to flesh them out and make them seem a bit more realistic and have their rules or whatever, but they're just a bunch of, like, brats that I don't give a shit about. Most people seem to feel the same way. Plus, they look a little bit like Klingons, and they act a little bit like Klingons. So if it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And they're just like, and they try to make it different than Klingons in this episode. But, like, this caste system is earning your name by, like, killing yourself and proving yourself seems very similar to Klingons. Like, if there was an episode with Klingons in it that did the same exact thing, had a teenage boy saying, I need to kill you to earn my name, like, that would fit right in. You would be like, oh, that makes sense. That's another sort of Klingon heritage culture thing. Now, and I talked about this before in other videos, and this is something I didn't learn until relatively recently, like within the past decade, whereas this came out, 3 decades ago. But, so not while I was first watching it. But apparently, the Kazon were modeled off of LA street gangs. Actually, I might have heard about this in the early 2000s, but it was still well after I saw this episode. And I totally didn't get that. I think they really failed. Like, it's kind of similar to the fact that the Ferengi in season 1 of TNG were modeled off, or supposed to be commentary on Wall Street greed, and it doesn't come off that way at all. Like, if that was their goal, they absolutely, utterly failed at that goal. Now, maybe not quite as bad here with the Kazon, but still, like, if no one told me that the Kazon were modeled off of LA street gangs, I would have never guessed. Now, once I have this information, I'm like, oh yeah, no, that kind of fits. The whole, like, initiation things could be similar to, like, some gang rituals where you have to go off and rob someone or kill someone in order to make a name for yourself in the gang or something like that. Sure, I mean, you could even apply that to the mafia or something like that. Not saying I know any specifics because I don't really know much about either situation, but from what I glean, seems to be the case. So you could make that connection. Plus the fact that there are a lot of different sects of there we go, Floridians, Kazons. That's similar to how there's different a lot of different street gangs. And how there's some that are more dominant than others, just like there's some Kazon sects that are more dominant than others. Like the Nistrum was a relatively small sect. It's just the fact that got the boost from Seska and her technology sort of started making them a major player. Of course, we'll get into that more in the episode Maneuvers. I think the Ogla, who was the same sect we saw in Caretaker, I think they're meant to be one of the major players, if I remember correctly. But either way, it's like, okay, now that you mention it, sure, I can see, like, the connection to LA street gangs, but I'm sorry, they're just fucking Klingons. Like, they even look like the makeup with the foreheads even looks similar to Klingons. They're like Klingons with dreads. And the way that they act in the Star Trek setting with, spaceships and stuff, you're just not going to think LA Street Gangs. You're going to think lesser budget version of Klingons, which is exactly how they come off as. And so that's what I think that's part of what totally disinterests me, and not just me, it seems like everyone else as well, from learning more about the Kazon. Like in episodes like this where like, oh yeah, we have all these different sects and we have these initiation process, and they had to even have the kiss of death, which is right out of a fucking mafia movie. I don't know, it seems more like a little bit more like the mafia than LA Street Gangs to me, but I don't know. It's just it's budget Klingon. It is, because you put it in the Star Trek setting with the ships and the foreheads and all that. No one's going to think Street Gang. They're going to think budget Klingons, which is basically what it is. So the other interesting thing to note about this episode is that I believe, I don't know whether or not it was the first episode made for season 2, but it's the first episode that was made for season 2. Because, as I mentioned, the 37s was actually made in season 1, so was Projections, Elogium, and Twisted. So this episode actually was made for season 2 as far as I can tell with the background information. So yeah, first real season 2 episode. And yeah, I mean, I'm struggling to think of more to say about this episode, but I don't really have it. Like, I mean, Chakotay, at least, different than later seasons when he's not given anything to do. At least he's giving stuff to do. I mean, the whole thing with going off in the shuttlecraft by himself to do his ritual. Like, why doesn't he do that on Voyager where it's safe? And even if he had to go on the shuttle, couldn't he do it close to Voyager where it was safe? Like, they're in a dangerous territory. They know that. Like, and why the fuck did Neelix not warn them? Now, I think what the BS excuse they try to give is that their territory constantly changes. But they have a training, like, they have all this mines and training stuff on this planet, and they even say, oh, we've been using this for our moon, whatever. But they even say, oh, we've been using this for a long time. Then I repeat, why the fuck didn't Neelix know? Even maybe suspect, like, oh, careful, Captain, the Kazon Ogla are known to be somewhere in this area, so you should be a bit careful, not wander off too far or whatever, or be prepared, because they might be, maybe not, but, so Neelix fucking failed at his job. And what is that with the scene where, Tom Paris, it's interesting seeing Tom Paris in command of Voyager. That was interesting. Because Tuvok and Janeway beamed out to the planet and Chakotay was, missing. And then, but freaking Neelix sits in the captain's chair and is like, oh, kind of taunts the Ogla and, because he knows a little bit about them. So he was kind of useful in that situation, to give him a little bit of credit. And, this episode wasn't all bad. I did find the whole thing with Chakotay deciding to, like, sacrifice himself, even though he's like, oh, Voyager could revive me. That's not 100%. Like, he's taking a huge risk by saying, actually kill me. But he felt responsible for Carr losing his name, which is essentially losing his life, and so he wanted to amend that, but then Carr ended up realizing that doing that wouldn't even help, so he had to kill the main Ogla dude. So that stuff kind of interesting. Like, it was kind of interesting. And also, how the Kazon were teaming up with Janeway and her away team, but it was obvious that they were just fucking with them like the way. And I think Janeway knew, like, they were suspicious of them, but they kind of tricked them when the guy is like, oh, this way, and Tuvok is like, no, actually, it seems to be this way, and the Kazon, the Maj or whatever was like, oh, yeah, no, my apologies, that guy's trying to deceive you, and so they went Tuvok's way, and they got trapped, so the guy was actually being honest. It was the mage who was deceiving them, and Tuvok is kind of a putz for falling into the trap, not saying, just saying, so yeah, I mean, this is not this episode is not without any entertainment value or any merit. It's just, if I had the choice of watching it or not watching it, I would choose not watching it. As this is an episode I would try to skip because I'm sorry, that Kazon Nog is annoying as fuck, and I don't give a shit about the Kazon. So, no. So that's all I have to say. So I would now like to thank my Patreon supporters very much for supporting me on Patreon's very much appreciated. This helped me continue with the channel. I want to give a big special thanks to Brandon Neilhouse and Jordan Johnson. Thank you both so very, very much for your strong support. I would also like to give a shout out to Tyler Cease, Benjamin Mead, Antarius, Greg Marley, Francisco Chuck Hooks, Kyrie091, Anthony D. Benedictus, Ricky, Maddie Jester, Joel Lavals, Alessandro Miguelosio, Norman Buckwald, Stephen Kennedy, Britton Berg, and Allison Fordyce. Thank you all so very, very much for your support. So we do have a few Patreon comments on this episode. First comment is from Kyrie091, who says, initiations, more like this shit is lame, sons. Oh, I remember this one. It's the one where Nog shows up, and then I'm sad because it's not actually Nog, and I'm not watching DS9. I'm watching Voyager, which means no Vic Fontaine. At best, in a few seasons, we'll get the Borg, and I'll hear her say, Nogway! This episode was an interesting idea. I get what they were trying to do, but real talk, it just made me wish I was watching DS9. I don't get why you like it so much, Mark. I know it's in your top 5 episodes of Star Trek between Endgame and Impact Nor, but I don't know if it's that good. Well, I think your knowledge of what episodes I like that are in my top 5 might be a little off. Anyway, next comment is from Norman Buckwald, who says, I'm not a big fan of this episode. Aaron Eisenberg does his best, but in my mind, I keep picturing Nog and Chakotay's story, and the world building of the Kazon doesn't seem to do much, even though I guess their different sects or gangs is a bit interesting, but other than that, I'm not going to give this episode a flat 5 out of 10. It wasn't terrible, but it also wasn't that memorable. Alright, so next comment is from Stephen Kennedy, who says, Story time! The origin of the Kazon. About 9,000 years ago, a great man visited a planet called Kazon. He noticed something while he was exploring the different countries on Kazon. Each new place that he traveled to, he noticed that the Trest were different in each. Oh, the dress, does that mean dress? I don't know. Was different in each region. He decided to create life forms. Oh no, tress. What is a tress? I don't know. He decided to create life forms from tress, like the same way Saruman created the Urukai. When he was finished creating the different sects, he dropped dead as these new creatures were bloody ugly. These tree-like creatures. Or maybe was it meant to say trees rather than tress? I don't know. These tree-like creatures were not alone on this planet. They were captured and were forced to work as slaves for a race called the Trabe. So this great man who made the tree-like people is remembered as a moron by the Kazon. Tom Paris said this during an outtake, that these Kazons are just pre-prototype Klingons. Chakotay makes this episode a little bearable, and this is where the Maquis storyline officially dies, as Chakotay is now 100% back in Starfleet. So my rating is 5. Welcome to the Klingon Academy, and today is a good day to fall out of 10. I don't really get your Kazon mythology thing. I'm not sure what you're trying to say with that. But anyway, that the Kazons suck or boring and ugly and uninteresting, sure, that I'll agree with. Alright, next comment is from Antarius, who says, why didn't Neelix warn Janeway about the Kazon Ogla? Thank you! Thank you. Maybe then Chakotay would have performed his ritual in his quarters instead of using a shuttle, and this way we wouldn't have to watch this episode. A lot of things happen very conveniently. For example, only long-distance communication is damaged. In the end, Kazon Nog earned his name by killing his Maj because all of the sudden in the things that Rajik is his enemy. Sorry, but in my opinion, that doesn't make much sense. It was nice to see Vasquez Rocks again. I liked seeing Paris in command, and I appreciate that the thought that they wanted to do some world building with the Kazons, but besides that, there's not much positive to say about this one. Next week on Voyager, Janeway forges an alliance with some Kazon sect owning a coffee planet. My rating is a 4 out of 10. No, I agree with everything, and I think I heard this was Vasquez Rocks. I didn't recognize it, but that does make sense. Apparently it's a common park where a lot of people go. I didn't realize that. I thought it was just a random place where they filmed Star Trek episodes, like Arena and Who Watches the Watchers, and yeah, so many. I still got a bone to pick with Picard by having Vasquez Rocks, and people were guessing, oh, are they going back to the Gorn planet? Are they going to, Mintaka? Ooh, where is it going? But no, it was actual Vasquez Rocks in the fucking show, and I hated that. Like, no, that's bullshit. That's why you film Star Trek. You don't actually have a character living in Vasquez Rocks. Like, what the fuck? Like, just don't. But anyway, neither here nor there. Next comment is from Brandon Neil Howes. He says, how are the Kazon so far away from the Okampa home planet? Why is Chakotay in the shuttle alone in the middle of nowhere? And why doesn't the computer warn him when Car's ship fires on him? Geordi LaForge suffered from the same problem. True, very true. If the Kazon have such a high mortality rate from killing their enemies or superiors, how are there so many of them? There are no female Kazon at all. Are the lava heads the Delta Quadrant equivalent of Cabbage Patch Kids? It was a bad decision to have Aaron cast Eisenberg as Car, because every time he opens his mouth, Nog's voice comes out 100%. I wonder where the Kazon get their large ships from. Maybe they're related to the Pakleds. Kazon ships have no stasis field or holding cells to restrain prisoners, just a line on the floor. The episode is noteworthy for the mention of the Trabe, who will appear in a much better episode later this season. 3 carefully folded medicine bundles before Chakotay fires on Car's scout ship out of 10. So they actually did answer where the Kazon got their ships from the Trabe. Those are actually Trabe ships. Later in that particular better episode that you mentioned, we meet the Trabe and they have the same kind of ships, and I think they even mention, the Kazon actually stole our ships and technology, that's how they have it. So there you go. That actually tracks. That actually makes a bit of sense. A bit of world building, and you're right, they do introduce the concept of the Trabe in this episode, which is somewhat interesting. Again, you feel like they're doing a little bit of the analogy to African Americans because saying that we were once enslaved, but they're still being treated as, second class citizens. So I think they're making a loose connection there. Now, as far as how the Kazon's so far away from the Compton planet, this is total headcanon, and I am kind of making this up, but it tracks, like it fits. And I talked about this when I did my revisited of Jetrel, because in the episode Jetrel, they had to travel back to Talax, to the Talaxian homeworld. And they were like, wow, that's a significant detour. And I think if you look at it, they could have basically undid all of the traveling that they did in season 1 in that one episode. In fact, the episode might have spanned a long time that they had to travel all the way back. And so it took them back into Kazon space, basically. And so my response would be, maybe they're actually not that far from the Compton homeworld, because they had to backtrack their entire journey to go back to Telex. But again, that is just headcanon. Anyway, next comment is from Ricky, who says, this episode is subpar, and maybe this is why I might prefer season 1 to 2, because season 2 had a rough start, but season 1 didn't. But it's not a terrible episode, it's just meh. I mean, I like Chakotay's part in the episode, and at first I found the Nog Kazon annoying, but I did feel for him in the second half, but it's just not much to see, not much to it, and the Kazon aren't particularly good recurring villains. But one of the best episodes of season 2 is Alliances. Now that's a great episode, and I will talk more about that when we get to that episode, but here it's just meh, so my rating is a 5 out of 10. Everyone seems to be on the same page with me about Alliances being a much better episode, but we'll get to that when we get to that. Anyway, thank you, patrons, so much for your comments. So my rating for Initiations out of 10 is going to be a 3. Very poor. So I'm actually a little bit lower than most people. Because most people gave it a 5 or 4. I'm going as far down as a 3. Because even though, like, there are aspects to it that are okay, like, it is a very annoying episode. Like, I don't care about this car and the fact that it's Aaron Eisenberg, as Brandon pointed out. Every time he opens his mouth, you hear Nog. Like, it's Nog. It's fucking Nog wearing the wrong makeup, and he acts like Nog, and he looks like Nog, and he talks like Nog. It's fucking Nog, who's annoying, and he's even more annoying in putting him in a budget Klingon ripoffs who are not interesting, and I don't really care about exploring, and they totally failed at trying to make an analogy to LA Street Gangs. Instead, they're just budget Klingons. Nobody gives a shit about them. The only sort of high point of the episode is Chakotay and seeing Tom Paris in charge. That's about it. It's a very, very skippable episode in my humble opinion. Anyway, that is it for my review of Initiations. If you did enjoy this review, please be sure to leave a like, leave a subscribe, leave a comment below, all those sorts of YouTube type thingies. And if you really want to support the channel, you could do so by supporting me on Patreon. A link in the description below. Different rewards, such as I do a Patreon-only series of videos where I revisit reviews already made, exclusive for my Patreon supporters at pre-releases. You can request videos for me to do, make comments that I read in my videos, stuff like that. You can check out if you are so inclined to do so. So let's see what's coming up next on my channel. Saturday, I'll be doing a patron-requested video doing the best and worst minor aliens of Star Trek Next Generation. Or it's top 5, I believe. Top 5 best and worst. Something I've done for the original series and Deep Space Nine so far, but now been requested to do it for the Next Generation. But after that, unfortunately, I'm going to be taking a 2-week break just to get caught up with real life and everything. So there will be no videos in the first 2 weeks of June. But I hopefully will be returning on June 16th with my review for the Voyager episode Projections. So that's what's coming up on my channel. Be sure to check it out as I continue to cover Star Trek Voyager and Star Trek Deep Space Nine and many other videos on Star Trek and other shows as well. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.